Welcome to Spilling the Tea with Dr. Joyce, a podcast that goes deeper than the highlight reel on social media. I'm Dr. Joyce Park, a board-certified dermatologist, content creator at Tea with MD, and founder of Skin Refinery Dermatology Clinic. Each week, I will be joined here by a remarkable guest, and together we'll discuss stories and strategies for balancing our challenging careers with our personal relationships while making time for beauty routines and self-care. So grab your favorite cup of tea, get comfy, and let's get ready to spill the tea together. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Spilling the Tea with Dr. Joyce, where we talk about the stories that don't really get mentioned on social media. Today, I have here a very, very special friend, Dr. Tope Rude, who is someone that I've known since high school because we went to the same high school in the Bay Area. And to start off with, I'm just going to read a short bio about Dr. Rude and how amazing she is, and then we'll launch right into it. Does that sound okay?
I love it. Can't wait to hear it.
Perfect. So Dr. Tope Rude is a urologist and pelvic reconstructive surgeon and clinical assistant professor in the Department of Urology at Stanford University School of Medicine. Originally from California, Bay Area, where she attended high school with me, she then attended Harvard for undergrad and did her medical school at Stanford with me again, where she was also co-manager of the Arbor Free Clinic. Dr. Rude has published numerous research articles for which she has won many, many awards, and she is also an inaugural fellow of the Well Black Women Institute. She currently lives in Menlo Park, California, and is mom to 3 littles, 2 boys, and 1 girl, and we are so excited to have you here today, Dr. Rude.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Park. We're doctors now.
Yeah, I know. We've come a long way since our high school days, trotting around downtown Palo Alto and all of that.
Indeed.
So, as I mentioned, this is going to be a casual conversation. You have such an amazing story, and I think so many people would benefit from hearing about your family life, your career. And just to jump right into it, I'd love to ask you about your upbringing and your family and how they may have encouraged you or not encouraged you to go into medicine.
Yeah, I love talking about my family. I am one of 6 kids, and my parents are both from Nigeria. So my dad came from Nigeria to go to Stanford for graduate school, and my mom came here to marry him. And there are, like I mentioned, 6 of us, but 5 girls. The baby is the boy. And we all are T names, which was a very big part of our identity. We were this crew, you know. And for us and our family, and I think pretty similar to a lot of families, especially a lot of immigrant families, there was always this idea of community and also, you know, being excellent and using all the gifts that we had been given to some greater purpose. And again, as a Nigerian, there was also the idea of academic excellence. I vividly remember being in kindergarten getting a C because my school gave us grades in kindergarten. And my dad came over to me and he just said, "We don't get C's in this family." It was the last C I ever got. But, you know, I think that I went through and I just happened to like science, but I also really liked people. For a while, my dream job and still my retirement job was to be a 2nd grade teacher. And all of us found our different ways. And for me, the different combination of science and just working with people in medicine is what ended up being the right fit for me. And again, as a Nigerian, you really had that or a lawyer, so I picked medicine.
Oh my gosh, Nigerian families and Chinese families are very similar.
Yes.
So I can relate. But something that I always was astounded and amazed by in your family is that, first of all, you're one of 6. You're the oldest of 6, which means you're the most responsible and you're always taking care of the rest of them.
Right.
But just every single one of you were so darn excellent and outstanding. And so I was wondering if you'd be able to share what all of your siblings do too.
This is going to be fun to catch up because when we last spoke, or when we were in school together, all of my sisters went to our same private girls' school, which is a very, very academically rigorous school. And my brother was also in this very, very intense school. And we were all kind of being put along the same path. And so
Yeah.
now looking back, we've completely ended up in a variety of places. So as the oldest, I'm a doctor, it's not a surprise. My sister Tomi, who's a year younger than me, just actually graduated from her orthopedic residency and is going to be a spine fellow, which is very exciting. And then something funny happened at Tayo, number 3. And again, vivid memory. She was in about 7th grade and she got a B on her science test. And my dad said, "This is not acceptable. We don't get B's in this family. What's wrong with you?" And she looked at him and she said, "I'm really proud of that. I worked hard and I think that's a very good grade." When I tell you,
Mind
Joyce,
blown.
I was like, "Wait, you can say that?" And that was her. She was just I don't understand. She took a film school in high school at Castellea. She fell in love with it and she went to USC to study film. She works harder than anyone I know. She is one of the artists in Los Angeles, directing, cultivating. She's got a podcast. I mean, she's doing all of the things and it's hard. And hats off to her. That's what she's doing. She loves it. She's been an instructor at USC for the last couple of semesters. So then all of the siblings began to say, okay, we can embrace our creative side. And it got rapidly out of
Yes.
control. So then number 4, Toby, she went to MIT as an engineer and then decided, you know what, I like architecture. So now she's working to get a degree in architecture. Number 5, Kenny, she went to Yale. She is actually still working as a consultant for nonprofit consulting. However, she uses her day job to subsidize her real passion, which is art. So she now is a
Wow.
designer, she's a painter, she is a model. She does some print modeling now in Brooklyn, New
Wow.
York. She's just living her very best life. And Jimmy, dear Jimmy, I mean, he sees all of these schools, all of these siblings, and he was kind of just
Yes.
taken aback. Plus, it was the pandemic. You know, he graduated high school in the heat of COVID. So he took his time. He actually lived with us in Wisconsin for a few years. But right now, he's moved to Texas. He is working at Tesla. He loves it. He's kind of starting these building blocks again. He's taking classes there also and just sort of imagining his big future on his own terms and having taken the time he needed to get there. And watching everyone's arc has been rewarding, but I think especially Jimmy, because so easily he could have said, well, I didn't go to some fancy school, I didn't do it on the right timeline. And to find him rediscover what's important about him and what's so, we all know what's valuable about him, but when he sees it and when he's building on it, it's been really fun. And that's what everyone's been up to.
Wow, a lot has changed. I just remember in high school, we all knew about the Amos sisters because you were all girls at the time. There was no Jimmy yet.
Right.
And just every single one of you just excelled academically and just you all went to like the best schools in the country. I mean, you like Harvard, Yale, MIT, like literally every single one of them, like you have them all. And I think it's really interesting that in birth order. It's like you and your second sister, you guys were like, doctors, surgeons, and then it slowly veered more and more towards the creative arts. And I think that's wonderful. And I
Yeah,
mean,
and it's amazing because, you know, often I think when you are coming into America and you're trying to raise a family, you just want them to be excellent. You don't really care what they're doing. You just want them to be excellent. And what you know is that being a professional, being a doctor, that resonates easily. And I think to be able to see what it takes to be a filmmaker, what it takes to be a model, what it takes to be an artist is equally, some would argue more effortful. And to see everybody be able to find where they really like to pour their hearts in has been fun.
I think about this a lot because I have been doing a lot of just soul searching and thinking about my own parenting and upbringing as I'm looking to parent my next generation and thinking about the expectations that were placed on me. Either they were consciously doing it or unconsciously doing it. I felt certain pressures to achieve a certain way, go into specific fields. And I've been thinking a lot about why specifically immigrant parents, do this so much to their children. And I think I've gotten to the point where I feel like immigrant parents want their children to go into certain professions because ultimately they want their kids to be happy. And they think that by having a stable job with a stable income, that can lead to a stable life and happiness. And for them, a lot of these other professions just carry a lot of risk and they just don't want to see us fail. So I've been thinking a lot about that and how I want to parent, my children and support their dreams while also keeping them realistic and saying, hey, you got to still be able to support yourself financially. And it's just this like interesting balance that we have to strike. And then for you and me, we're second generation. So we still have a lot of influence from our parents, but we also were brought up in America. So how do you reconcile all these things when you're looking to raising your kids?
I think for me, it even happened a little bit sooner because, after my dad passed, I felt like I needed to say the things that I feel need to be said or maybe that he would say. So, for example, when Taya was deciding to go to USC film school, my heart stopped. As my immigrant heart stopped, I said, so you want to take on twice as much debt as I took to become a doctor, which I'm concerned about how I'm going to pay off, to maybe have a film made? And I called her, and the conversation was, I want you to follow your dreams, but you need to understand a couple of things. There is a very high risk, I'd say it's probable, that it's never going to be the kind of life that you are walking the red carpet and everybody knows your name. There's a very real chance that you will be living, eating ramen, paying this off until you die. How do you feel about that? And not surprisingly, the same girl who knew her mind in middle school said, I am fine with that. This is what I want to do. And so I said, great. And I also mentioned, we're not going to be able to draw into a trust fund to be able to help you out. Like you are going to need to find a way. You're going to have to make this work. And it might not be all flowers and sunshine. She said, I know, I can't imagine doing anything else. If that happens to me, it will have been worth it. And that was so releasing for me to know she knows what she's doing, or at least I told her what she might need to expect. And
Yeah.
from here on out, we get to support her. And hopefully, and I think, with parents, when they're coming in, you don't know what to say. You don't know what to caution about. So you just say you shouldn't. And you're
Right.
really trying to care. But I think from my perspective, it's a question of curiosity, really understanding what it is about the details. I mean, I've learned an incredible amount about the industry. I'm like, oh, wait, you really only need to direct a primetime TV show every couple of years? Okay, this is a very different idea than what I had thought. I mean, you see it already. Just there are some things that our kids just gravitate to and that it's what they love. And I don't know exactly how my 7-year-olds and 5-year-olds interests are going to mature, but I know that I'll be able to look back and see the through line. And I think my hope is that if I'm a parent and Isaiah comes to me and says, Mom, I really think that I'm going to be a professional bird watcher, that there will be something where I can say, that to me sounds terrifying, but I see you in that. So let's find a way to make that work. We'll see if it works out.
Totally. That is so sweet and supportive and very inspiring as well to hear. You mentioned that your father passed, and I remember Mr. Amos well because he and my dad worked together for the father-daughter dance for our senior year at Castellet High School, and my dad, always asked about him. When did your father pass, and how did that impact your family and perhaps your career?
Yes, I mean, I think this is something so important to talk about at our white coat ceremony. I don't know if you remember, Abraham Verghese got up there and said, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle.
Yes.
And that stuck to me. My dad was there at the time. It stuck to me because it's so incredibly true that we walk around imagining that everybody is exactly what they're presenting to us. And it's just
Yeah.
not the case. So this is my version of that. I was first year of medical school. We had just been wrapping up the second year's rotation. So we were in physiology. We had, just finished cardiology or about to go to pulmonology. We had a break. We had just finished finals. And I got a phone call that my dad was sick. And it was very terrifying because he actually was in the throes of a psychotic depressive episode that my mom had tried to hide from us for months, but it had come to a head. And so I spent the next kind of month trying to do that and also take care of my family and my mother, who understandably was overwrought. And I moved out of the dorms. I sort of helped my family transition from selling our house, moved into the apartment. I was trying to still go to medical school. No one knew that this was happening.
I had no idea.
And then he had to be hospitalized for a couple of weeks, and the process of navigating the healthcare system and the mental healthcare system is a story for another day. He talked his way out into getting released. He got released. And so we felt like, okay, this isn't great, but we've made it through the storm. Now we put ourselves back together. And that morning I went to go run to just, clear my head. My mom called. I didn't answer. After the run, I went back. He had passed away. It was a sudden saddle pulmonary embolus.
What?
And so I'm there. The EMTs are asking us to count his pills because he had just been discharged from a psychiatric hospital. So I'm counting his antipsychotics on the floor. My siblings are still at Castellea. They drive them to the hospital. And it was just still feels like incredibly surreal. Like it never really happened. And for me, as the oldest, it was sort of an instantaneous, we have to come up with a plan. You have to come up with a plan because your mom's not coming up with a plan. She's completely devastated. You're 22, I believe. Your closest sister is still on the East Coast. Your other siblings are babies. They're not coming up with a plan. And yet you have to figure this out. So, with some aunts, we're figuring out, I took over his business for a little while, trying to figure out how to close the business. Do I keep the business going? I don't understand anything about tech. We're going to close the business. Where do we live? There were just so many different factors. And in addition to making sure that everybody was okay, I knew that continuing on with medical school was important for everyone. I mean, this event was a shock. It was tragic, but to feel like, okay, the Amos children are going to be okay. No one told me this. I felt that was important to everyone and important to myself to some degree. So I kept going. I mean, I took, I think, a week or so off of school. I went back to this day, Joyce, and I probably shouldn't say this in a form where it could be Googled, but if you ask me anything specific about pulmonary physiology, I will have to look it up. I mean, I barely recall. And not only was it
I
during,
barely recall any of it either. So we're on the same page.
I mean, it was during this block. He died of a saddle. I couldn't even read the word lung. So we're going through, I don't know how I passed that test. I passed that test. And, that was that. My medical school friends, you guys came over, and it was just one of those incredible moments where I could find things to be grateful for. And that really did, as weird as it sounds, sort of drive me forward. Focusing on my family really helped. And I remember going through it and thinking, at one point, I wonder if this is just going to all, come back. And am I suppressing things right now? Is this going to be a maladaptive way of coping that I'm going to have to pay for later? And it's been 12 years, and who knows if this is the case or not, but I think it was actually my process of saying, okay, if this has happened, if I can find a way to be useful, to keep going, this is what there was something for me that was very therapeutic about that, that of course, you always have moments where you feel that this is wrong, you know. You get married and you think this is wrong. There's somebody missing. You have your kids and you name them after your dad thinking this again, he should be here. But it's never been a feeling of, oh, I wish I had, stepped away to devote all of my energy to that loss. There was something about living through it
Yeah.
that, I mean, and we're all so different. We're all so different. But that's how it impacted me. And that's how it kind of propelled me forward.
Yeah, it really did. And I mean, you must have been such a rock for your family during that time. Like, I always thought of you as a leader, like in the academic world, but I really see that you are kind of like the leader of your family, and you really stepped into that role even more, to fill your father's shoes. And I just had no idea of all of this that was happening in medical school, Tope. Like, I wish I could have been there more, supported more, but you're so strong and you held it together so well. And it really rings true what you said about, Dr. Verghese's quote of how you never know what is really happening to someone behind the scenes. And we're all walking around hiding something or other. Um, and that rings true for me too. And it really strikes me. So thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's not an easy thing to share about. And I really can see how that has shaped you and impacted your life in a
Yeah.
very, very big way. Yeah. Um, and, talking about you being a leader and a trailblazer, another thing that I wanted to ask you about when I think back to all of our shared experiences from Castellea High School through to Stanford Medical School through to you moving to Wisconsin, I know that there was not a lot of diversity, especially at Castellea. And I don't think I recognized that at the time because we didn't really talk about it. And even at Stanford Medical School, in medicine in general, I think that there's just not as much diversity in the workforce as much as we would like to help reflect the diversity of our patient population. And especially you being a surgeon in urology, which is a male dominated field, I wanted to ask you, are there instances where you have faced either racism or sexism in your career? And how have you been able to kind of rise above that, or how did you respond to it?
I think it's a very interesting question. And it's an interesting one for me as an immigrant because it feels different. I remember in Castellea one day looking at myself in the mirror and I was surprised I was black. It was shocking. I looked and I was like, oh my God, you somehow completely almost erased that side of you because it wasn't in my home. We identified as Nigerian and,
Right.
and it clearly wasn't at Castellea. We were all the same, we were all Gap, Abercrombie, whatever.
Yeah.
And so, it was culturally just a very weird thing to understand that there's a separation between how I perceive myself and how I am perceived. And going to
Yeah.
college was where I started to explore that. I tried to join the hip hop heads group. That did not go very well. I did not last there very long. In fact, the experiences in college were two nicknames jump out to me. One is an Oreo. There's obviously many different versions of this. Somebody black on the outside, white on the inside. The second one was an incog, which is short for incognito, which is somebody who just doesn't really participate in the black community, which I thought was strange because I was a member of the gospel choir for 4 years and part of the different African organizations, etc. But there was something about being able to be culturally black that I never really understood. And what I kind of came to during that time in college, and I still kind of hold to today, is that I don't have to become part of a culture that is not organically me to understand that who I am and how I present myself impacts others' understanding, right? So if I walk into a room, no one is going to think, oh, well, she's probably a first generation Nigerian. She's probably,
Right.
no, they just see who I am. They see that I'm a woman. They see that I have dark skin, and that's how they relate to me. It made it a little bit easier to navigate issues of racism or sexism because I felt kind of protected from it. I didn't feel that they knew me. I didn't feel like they were making inferences that in any way related to me. I said, well, this is, very much about you. And it also allowed me to compensate for that without feeling like I was being untrue to myself. For example, you have never seen a more pleasant person in the operating room. Never seen a more pleasant person. Always, oh, Dr. Rude, you're so understanding about the fact that we're running 70 minutes late and we let this other guy go first. Oh, it happens. I understand. To perhaps a fault, but you will never catch me being upset, raising my voice. In fact, when I get really livid, really mad, I just become quiet or I'll speak very quietly because it doesn't take much. I understand it doesn't take really anything to suddenly be the angry black woman. And now there's nothing that you can say. And she's never calm and she's always making. Is it wrong to try to adapt for that? I have a lot of friends who feel that it is. I have a lot of friends who just feel that's very it's really inappropriate to try to make other people see you in a certain way or make other people more comfortable. And I don't disagree with them. I just know that for myself, it never felt like I was trying to avoid racism. Is more I was trying to make space for myself. And honestly, we could all probably be a little bit calmer in the operating room. So there are some good things about it too. I've been really, really blessed. I've been really blessed with everyone that I have worked with, especially on the topic of race and education and medicine. I think that I have worked with people and in institutions where there's at least a surface awareness of it. And I've worked with colleagues who, were working across the street from me and had vastly different experiences just because of the priorities of the organization. So I've been fortunate. I obviously you know it, you navigate it. I think that I used to call my colleagues and my support group at NYU my own personal underground railroad of success, because you walk in there and very few people in leadership look like you, right? No one really. And it's not that they're trying to dismiss you, it's that they have a bond with everybody else who's not you. And you
Right.
I can't pretend like I have that kind of knowledge or that kind of background but who I have every single staff member. I have every single member of the support staff. I have every single member of the custodial staff. I know everybody's name. They know my name. Our admin should, Tope, I'm about to send this message over to your director. You haven't sent me this email back. You have 3 minutes and then I'm going to send it. These are the small things that it felt like
Yeah.
that lifted me up. And I said, there is racism here. I think it's shocking to me that every staff person at NYU was a person of color, effectively. But there's something about still being, okay, well, we're going to make this work. And knowing that everyone is lifting for you,
Yeah.
the custodian at the VA, he would talk, he would say food. I mean, just, these are the things that I embraced and I enjoyed. I think sexism is a trickier one, actually, especially in medicine, especially in surgery.
Yeah.
I had a baby in residency, I had a baby in fellowship, I had a baby during my first job. And I
Wow.
think I would have colleagues whom I love, who are lovely. We were doing a body scan ultrasound. They said, oh, let me scroll down and see if that IUD is in place. Or, what does maternity leave look like? Or just all of the, as you know, my first leave was 2.5 weeks. So that to me has been more astounding. I think both are active issues. And I think as we each keep doing the best we can, that's all we can really do.
I'm sorry, 2.5 weeks? Your
Oh,
maternity leave is 2.5 weeks?
I haven't told you this
Okay, you need
story.
to tell me about this. You have told me, but I've forgotten. Please tell us the story of your 2.5 week maternity.
I'll tell you the story of my maternity leave. I was advised that in order to graduate on time, I could only take a total of 6 weeks off for the year. And I had to graduate on time because residency ends June 30th and fellowship begins July 1st, and I had to get
Right,
across the country. I was due
right.
at the very beginning of my chief year. So I looked at the calendar. I said, okay, I've got 6 weeks. I need to move across the country. So that's 1 week. I need to be able to see my family during the holidays. That's 1 week. And I'm going to need, there was something else, but I ended up saying, okay, I'll take a 3 week maternity leave. This is what I will do.
Okay.
But then it turned out that at 2.5 weeks, we had a major case. We had an open nephrectomy with IVC thrombus. So there was tumor clot moving up toward the patient's heart, and I was the chief of the service. I really did care for the patient, and I thought 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, just go back now. It's all the same. So I say I will be there for this surgery. The day of the surgery, living on the 14th floor of 24th Street, the water main breaks on the 6th floor. The elevators are down. So I
Oh
march my
no.
postpartum little body down 14 flights of stairs. I go into the operating room. That's 7 a.m. This case, Joyce, was 14 hours long.
Oh,
Every 3 hours, I would leave to pump. At 8 p.m., I had just had it. I was just done. I walked out of the OR. I didn't take off my scrub cap. I didn't change my shoes. I marched down the stairs. I walked across the street to my building, up 14 flights of stairs, fed the baby, said, I'll be back, down 14 flights of stairs, up back into the OR, 3 more hours. They
oh
finished
my
at
God.
11, walked back up those 14 flights of stairs, and I walked in. Colin looked at me, the baby looked at us. We were just all like, what?
What just happened?
It was a vaginal delivery.
How? You're
Yeah,
super sweet.
you know what helped me? In general, what helps me with everything is when you zoom out a little bit. I remember when I was trying to figure out my maternity leave and I thought it was so impossible, I got online and it turns out most women in America don't have maternity leave. And of
Really?
course, we know that most women don't have paid maternity leave, but I'm talking about maternity leave. I mean, they deliver a baby a week, maybe two vacation time, and then they're going back. And these are not women who are working at like Google, right? These are women that are working capital W. And so I thought, if this is the case, I'm not saying that it's good, but I'm saying it's probably possible and we're gonna have to find a way. But that blew my mind that I'm going to work in New York City. How many women who are turning over rooms or cleaning beds or fixing meals or caring for the elderly are in the same boat.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's how I did it.
Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should have to do it. And I
And I
think
never
in
really
medicine,
understood. Like I was like, well,
just do it.
right. And I did it and it wasn't great. I mean, the story is kind of hilarious, but I did go back to work the following day. And,
Um,
my pelvic floor isn't terrific, but fortunately I can fix that one day and my colleague can. And then my second delivery, I took 6 weeks. And my third delivery, I took 3 months. Now, in residency, when I came back from my 2.5 week leave, one of my co-residents came back from a 3 month leave, complicated by medical issues, and she had a much harder time leaving her child than I did. And I was like, well, everyone's different, like that's fine, but I didn't understand it. The amount of, and at the same time, that that show Working Moms came out. It's filmed
Oh,
in
I've seen it on
Canada.
Netflix.
And the
Yeah.
first episode was them like panicking because they were going back after 8 months. I had to turn off the TV and walk away. I was like, I can't with these women. This is so ridiculous. But after my 3 month leave, I realized it's a completely different story. When you pop out for 2 weeks, you don't process, you don't heal, you don't bond. It's like nothing happened. And so you can kind of just go back and, but when you have that time to actually bond,
Yeah.
it was infinitely more disruptive. It was infinitely more challenging to separate. And so I can imagine now, yeah, sure, if you had an 8 month maternity leave, you have fed this baby, you know everything about this. This baby knows you. You guys are still so close
You're
and you
like
can see them
one.
growing. They're starting to
Yeah.
move more and now you have to leave them to go to work. I can understand it a little bit better. But it's just a completely different question of what is physically, humanly possible. You know, like when you were running from a lion, could you give birth and then run the next night? Probably. To what is appropriate and what do we hope for ourselves as a culture to actually be able to
Yes.
bond and to nurture and to support that.
And I think that by having more women in leadership positions, like you went back into academia, you're fighting the good fight. I'm hopeful that we can change the outcomes for the next generation of female trainees. Because think about how many women put off having kids until they're done with residency, done with fellowship, and the statistic is astounding. It's 1 in 4 female physicians struggles with infertility. And that's absolutely insane. I mean, I went through IVF, like several of our friends went through IVF, and it's just the reality of it. It's not easy to have a baby when you're in training. It's simply not, as you've shown.
And
So,
and I think that your point about the camaraderie and the community of women is such a phenomenal point. Like I mentioned my pregnancy, I alluded to my colleague. I was the first pregnancy in my program for, I think it had been about 16 years. There was an attending who had been the last one, and she was, she was, one of these superhuman women, and she's on faculty now. And so I very much felt this is the standard. And everyone saw what I went through, what Haley went through, and there were women, 1 to 2 every year for the next, I believe, 4 years, who had babies. And each year they became more and more progressive. Like the next year, they said, this isn't a rule. The 6 week is imaginary. The American Board of Urology is going to back me up on this. So now it was 8 weeks. And then they went further the following year. They said there should not be a disconnect. My maternity leave shouldn't be part of vacation. So that was another. And,
right.
and they continued to go. It's still not reasonable. But because there were so many women, because we saw what
Yes.
each other went through,
Yes.
they felt the support. It wasn't as if our chair said, we should probably do this better.
Yeah.
But they were able to build upon that. And I was actually quite proud of that. I was very proud, not just that folks wanted to replicate the craziness that I did, but to say, okay, it's possible, but that should never happen. Let's
Correct.
continue to think about how we want this to look.
Yeah, and I remember talking to our good friend Natalia, who I also interviewed for this podcast. She was also one of the first residents, like in decades, to give birth during residency. And then ever since her, they've also started making some changes in her fellowship as well. So it's kind of like if this never happens, if women just continue to accept these horrible conditions and just put off, having children until they were done with training, nothing's going to change. And it's sad that we have to go through this in order to affect change, but at least it's slowly happening. And that honestly is very inspiring to hear. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, so you have 3 kids. We've spent a lot of time talking about how you gave birth to the kids. Now you have the kids. They're 7, 5, and how old is your youngest?
Zoe is a year and a half, 18 months.
So precious.
She's the
I
best.
want to ask you, how the heck do you make it all work? Like, how are you able to be a practicing surgeon, doing research, mentoring people, and also mom to three? How do you make time for all of this? What does your village look like?
This is an excellent question. It's one that I'm asked often. It's one that I ask my friends often because even as I'm doing it, I look at my friends and I think, how is that possible? I actually did. I asked one of my colleagues this. I said, how do you do this? She goes, the exact same way you're doing it. And I realized she also has three children about the same age as me. She also has the same job. And I think just the more stories that you hear, especially along the way, it opens your mind to what the possibilities are.
Yes.
I had, like I said, my two children in training. So the until my oldest was 6, it was just the two of us, and so our village, taking care of us in terms of no family around. And so our village really became a nanny that became a friend who then, we kind of took in to help her out, and then she kind of helped us out. And you find your people that you can kind of lean on. But truly, when we didn't have family around, it was mostly just myself and my husband. And we had this conversation when we were pregnant with our first. And I said, my life is not my own. I don't get to control my schedule. I can promise you that I will take very good care of this baby for 10 months that it's in my belly, because pregnancy is 10 months, not 9. I'll take care of
Right.
this baby for 10 months, but after that, you're going to need to be able to be primary parent. I can't be relied upon. I wish I could be.
Yeah.
And he said yes. And so that's how it went. I mean, I went back after 2.5 weeks. He was with the newborn until that baby was a little bit older. Um, I I was very fastidious with sleep training because I have to sleep. So these babies, nothing interrupted their sleep schedule. If I got home at 7:05 and the baby was down at 7, I didn't see them. I was a resident. I didn't see Isaiah for weeks or a week at a time sometimes. And Colin was, holding it down. That was hard for me. And the way that I kind of coped with it was two ways. One was food. I said, okay, well, I can't be there, but if I can feed him, I can know that I'm loving him. So I was
Yeah.
able to pump, fortunately, but then I was, in the kitchen making a bunch of food, purees all the time. And then when you get 2 and then 3, I said, we're going to need a little bit more robust village. So that factored into moving home. I mean, my mom was going to have to live with us, and either I fly this wonderful Nigerian woman to Wisconsin,
Yeah.
or I move back home to where she has her community, and so that's what we did. And she is the secret. I call her the secret sauce. We're fortunate, she lives in an ADU. She's healthy. The kids go to school
Amazing.
part time. She takes care of Zoe part time. As of this week,
Wow.
it was full time until this week. And it's invaluable because, you know, I was talking to one of our friends, Nicola, actually today, about she's, finishing up her fellowship in maternal fetal medicine and talking about how important it is to her to have a part-time job because her kids need her and she wants to be there for her kids. And I was just like, I'm so jealous. I agree with you. You're so right. They need all the time. They need all of the love. And I'm just grateful that I have my mom that's able to at least be there. And it's not the same. You constantly feel like you should be doing each job better, but you feel the knowledge that you are doing well and that you
Yes.
are giving love, even if it's not the way you want to give it, that you're still able to give it.
Yeah. And I think your kids will see how hard their mama works and feel that love, that you're taking care of them in this incredible way. And they have their dad around and they have extended family around and they have grandma. They have Grandma Amos, who's
Right.
giving them so much wonderful grandmotherly love. And so I think that's the reason why I even created this podcast in the first place, was really to have a space for us to talk about how difficult it is to have careers, to be the kind of moms we want. We hold ourselves to such high standards. And I feel like oftentimes society tells us that we can do all of it really, really well. But there's a caveat to it, right? Like we have to be open to accepting help and outsourcing things where the kids will still be fine.
Yeah,
And it'll free up our mental space and our energy to be able to do other things too. And it's a
absolutely. I
constant
remember
struggle.
like some of the advice I got, if you can think of doing anything besides surgery, don't be a surgeon. Kind of if this isn't everything that you have, you can't do it at all. And I strongly disagree with that. I can think of many things that I can do besides being a surgeon, like being a stay-at-home mom. I'd be a great stay-at-home mom. If with the kids with a nanny, of course. I'd do great at that. But, I think that if you find a kernel of what you love, you'll find a way to make it work. And I think more and more now, women are being able to say, I can be excellent. It's not that I'm a casual surgeon, it's that
Yeah.
I'm utilizing the options that are available to me. It doesn't have to be all done in the same way. Some
Yeah.
good advice that I think, maybe this isn't new anymore, but it said, of course, you can have everything, not just all at once. And I try to
Yeah.
remind myself of that. Life is changing. Life is full of seasons. I love my kids right now. I wish I was with them all the time. I do think that it'll be more important that I can talk to them about, you know, their issues when they're 14, 15, 16, and I want to be the one walking them through that.
Yep.
And when they're 2, 3, and 4, and they need to learn to not bite people. And
Yeah.
that's just me. I mean, every family is different. Every mom is different. But I do think that being able to understand there are seasons and that you can be okay with something for a season and that will change down the road and that's how it's supposed to be. That to me was really releasing. And I don't know that we
Mhm.
think about that often enough. So we think everything just right now, everything excellent all the time. It's going to change.
Yeah. I love that advice. And I feel like my husband Matt and I, we're going through the different seasons as well. And I've talked about this before, but when he was previously working at super, super intense hypergrowth startup that demanded all of his time and energy, that's when I feel like I took a more stable clinic job where I kind of took the back seat a little bit, and I did all of the childcare, took care of a lot of things. And now that he's wrapped up that season of his life, he's really become like full on stay at home dad, taking care of everything for the kids. And I can lean in a bit more into my career and travel and go after all these things that I really wanted to do, all the entrepreneurial things that I felt like I couldn't take a risk on before. And I think we don't talk about that enough too, is the fact that you can also take turns. And just like you're saying, these seasons, sometimes it's one spouse's season to shine and grow in their career. And sometimes, it can be the other spouse's turn. And I think we didn't really know that that was an option, or at least I didn't really think about that being an option. And it's very freeing, like you mentioned, to know that not everything is permanent and you can always continuously change.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exciting to hear about you and Nat. I feel like we've been talking about my catch up. I want to hear everything about you and Tea with MD. I mean, speaking of somebody that knew their way early.
Oh my gosh,
And
I
you're at
do not
NBC
feel like I
Fellowship,
made my way early.
the NBC
I feel
Fellowship,
like
I remember.
I feel like I just kind of stumbled into this since I did my journalism fellowship, which I had no idea social media would become such a legitimate platform for education and for talking about skincare and also skin health and medicine in general. It's just my career has taken a very unexpected turn. And I still see patients through my virtual practice, but I now get the flexibility of setting my own hours for when I want to see patients. And then the other stuff I do, the consulting, the travel, that can all be kind of built in around it. And I can finally say that I feel like I'm very, very happy with the way my career has evolved. It has taken a long time to get here, and it's very unexpected, but I find a high level of satisfaction in it. And even though I'm doing things in a non-traditional way, and I maybe got a lot of pushback and got a lot of judgment for taking this route, at this point, I'm kind of like, well, it's my life. I'm the one living it, and I'm really happy. So at the end of the day, that's what really matters.
I love it. And that non-traditional path, like you're speaking, when I took my job, my first job was not in academics, and you can't leave academics. That's if you leave, you can't come back. I
Right.
had a
I've heard
friend and a
that too.
mentor so wise. She said, Tope, have you ever thought that maybe nobody comes back to academics because nobody wants to? She's an academic. She's actually one of my colleagues here now. She said, just
Yeah.
go, just find out. It was right for our family. We wanted to be near our family in Wisconsin. It was a terrific experience, and it clarified for me what I wanted out of medicine, the whole question about goals and values, which I somebody at some point told me, and I really latched onto that. You have to know what your values are. There's a few of them, just your core values, who you are. And once you know what those are, then you can come up with your goals. And the goals might change, the goals might look weird, but the values are going to be consistent. And being able to find out that, there are so many things that I love here. There are so many things I can achieve here, but the things that I will achieve aren't really toward my values of
Right.
wanting to find a way to be close to my mom as she's getting older and my family, wanting to make sure that I can contribute and give back some of the amazing knowledge and patience that has been given to me. It helped clarify to say, well, we're going to take a zab. We'll be the one person that came back from a very comfortable, wonderful practice. Nothing bad to say. It was terrific. It just wasn't here. And it really does feel like, okay, it's not perfect. Nothing is perfect. But I am excited, energized by it.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes that's the best we can do at the moment, right? Because nothing's perfect. You make the best out of every situation you have, and things are not permanent. I think that's the biggest takeaway here is that things can always change. And if you don't like something or if you find that something's going downhill, you can always still make a change. Nothing is permanent. And I think there's just, again, something very freeing about knowing that you can always go in a different direction if needed. And, thank you so much for your time today. I know we kind of went over time, but this was such a wonderful conversation. You had so many pearls to share, so many fun and amazing and inspirational stories. So thank you so much, Dr. Rude, for joining me on the podcast. Are you on social media at all? If any of our listeners want to find you?
This is on my list of things to do. I am on social media as Rude MD, but I'm working on it. Not all of us can be superstars like you, Dr. Park.
I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help jumpstart your social media because I don't
I'll
think
send
there's
it
a
to you,
lot of
and that'll
you
help
are
me
in a
update.
very specific niche in what you do, and I think more people need to learn about that, especially pelvic floor stuff. I'm actually gonna talk to you about pelvic floor stuff. Maybe we can do another podcast episode on it. But anyways,
I love it.
thank you so much for your time, and we're definitely gonna catch up the next time I'm in the Bay Area.
Love it. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today for our real, unfiltered conversations. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit subscribe on your favorite audio podcast platform. And if you're more visually inclined, all of our video podcast episodes are available on my YouTube channel at Tea with MD. For more beauty and skincare content, don't forget to check out my Instagram and TikTok at Tea with MD. Remember, life isn't just about the curated content we see on social media. It's about these real conversations we have with each other. So continue spilling the tea with your friends, family, and loved ones. And together we can create a more open, connected, and authentic community. Until next time.